Hey, what's up guys, Matt Laidlaw here. So I want to share with you guys my witness and account of how Harley-Davidson single-handedly changed the playing field in the heavy cruiser class motorcycle industry, and they did it with one bike. This is my story of the Streetglide. So this story starts off in the early 2000s. Let me take you guys back to that era and Harley-Davidson's offering during that time. So this is a 2001 Electroglide Ultra Classic. Note the beads and the buttons on the backrest back there with the tour pack. This bike very much resembles something you'd find like on a recliner in your grandpa's living room. So there was very much a divide between the touring bikes and your midweight cruisers like your Softails and your Dynas back then. So you either had to choose between being cool and riding like a Softail or a Dyna, or you had to make the commitment of losing your cool hat and moving into the touring bike arena, where you were then on a geezer glide or something that was in no way cool, where you could show up to like a rally or a show and have anything left in your self-esteem or charisma. So what people were doing to solve that problem and really get the best of both worlds, where they would have a comfortable bike plus something that was cool and that they would be proud of to show off to their friends, as guys were taking these Electroglides, and the most notable thing that they were doing was removing the tour pack, and then they would do a lot of other little things like lower it, throw bigger wheels on it. They would take a lot of the trim off, like the excess lights, a lot of like the fender lights and the fender chrome railings and things they would take off. And so they were really making the styling a lot more of like a minimalist. It was almost like what happened in the chopper era of post World War II, where guys were taking those bikes and chopping as much off as possible, which coined the phrase a chopper. A lot of guys were doing that to the baggers. So really what was happening was guys were chopping their touring bikes to make them more aesthetically pleasing, and in Harley-Davidson typical fashion, and in the typical owner of a Harley-Davidson, guys were customizing them. A lot of guys were, like I said, bringing these things down, chopping, making the windshield shorter, putting as very little on the bikes as possible in the way of like extra trim and like taking the tour pack and everything off. So that allowed them to have something a lot more comfortable, but something that they also could feel a sense of pride in riding. Well, during this time, Willie G. Davidson, which I think in my last video I noted that Willie G. Davidson is by far one of the top most 5 influential guys who have ever been associated with the Harley-Davidson Motor Company. I have a lot of respect for the man. Anyways, he was smart enough to notice this trend that was going on in the early 2000s where guys were tearing down these Electroglides, and so he designed the first Streetglide in 2006. So the Streetglide very much bridged the gap between the touring bikes and the midweight cruisers like your Softails. Up until that point, up until about the 2006-2007 model year, at our dealership Laidlaw's Harley-Davidson, the Deluxes and the Softails were just blowing off the showroom. I mean, we sold so many of those Softails. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, the touring bikes were pretty much just exclusively for the hardcore guy that really got out on the open road and did a lot of overnight trips and things like that. Most of your casual around town day tripper guys wouldn't even really look at the Electroglides too much. It was pretty much just, like I said, exclusively for the hardcore touring guy. But when the Streetglide came out, as a result of Willie G recognizing a need for this bike, after witnessing so many people basically building the Streetglide before it was officially named a Streetglide, Which, funny story, in those years, 2006, 7, and 8, I had tons of guys that would come in and say, yeah, I've got a trade-in, I've got a 2004 Streetglide I want to trade in. And I had to inform them that, hey buddy, the Streetglide didn't even come out until 2006, just because there were so many of these electric glides out there that had been chopped down to make it look like a Streetglide before the Streetglide even existed, that once the Streetglide was then released, a lot of people maybe got that bike secondhand and thought that they in fact had a Streetglide. So really they had like an FLHTC or an FLHTCU, when really they thought that they had an FLHX, for those of you who are familiar with the Harley-Davidson alphabet soup. So like I was saying, back in 2006, the first Streetglide rolled off the assembly line. And the bike was really popular in 2006, but it really didn't start exploding until 2007 and 2008 model year. In 2006, the bike still had a twin cam 88 with a 5-speed transmission and a 5-gallon fuel tank. People were catching on, people were liking it. But then when we rounded the corner into 2007, that's when this bike really started to blow up. That's when you had the 96 cubic inch and the 6-speed transmission applied to this bike. And then the next year, in the 2008 model year, you got the Brembo brakes, the 6-gallon fuel tank, and the throttle by wire. This bike shown here, by the way, is a 2008. And so in those 2 years, I saw the biggest shift in demand that I've ever seen in the history of me being in this business. Overnight, people really, the masses wanted to buy Softails, but when this bike really hit full stride 2007, 2008, we saw a shift where everybody was demanding the Streetglide after that. So it was like overnight where the demand for people went from Softail to these Streetglides. So the Streetglide really marked the time when Harley-Davidson really got into the custom bagger scene. And as soon as the Streetglide was released, that's when the term bagger and all of these custom baggers that you see nowadays were really starting to pop up. And that's when this culture really started to explode, is when Harley-Davidson started coming out with the Streetglide, and then they started offering the Road Glide that had the shark nose fairing without a tour pack on it as well. So you now had 2 fairings that were normally exclusively offered only on full-blown touring bikes, were now being offered on these almost like hybrid custom bagger touring bikes. And so we saw a big trend pop up in the bagger world, where guys were going to bigger and bigger wheels. The bigger the front wheel, the better. Big raked out front ends, lowered down. And so Harley-Davidson caught on to a lot of these trends and implemented them as much as they could without disrupting the functionality of the bike too much. The Streetglide is a lowered bike. You've got the chopped windshield that's smoked on there as well. You've got the fairing mounted mirrors, just more things to kind of give it that sleekness. Like I mentioned before, the fenders are all bare, no frills or trim around them. The seat is a very low profile seat. You don't got this big puffy grandpa seat on there. So everything was real sleek and low profile to it. And again, you saw this big boom of custom baggers with these huge wheels, and this trend's still going on today, and you can still find them out there and people still buy them. But really around that 2007 to about 2015-16 time period, these bikes were kind of at their height of popularity. I feel like now these types of just overblown, real radical baggers are kind of now going out of style. I see a new style emerging right now, and that is purpose-built or performance baggers. I feel like Harley-Davidson really needs to jump on the performance bagger bandwagon, if you will, right now, because I feel like that's where people are putting their money. People want a bike that can perform real well. It's less about cosmetics now, and it's more about hauling ass and really good suspension and everything. I'm getting off on a tangent here, so let me get back. So in 2009, Harley-Davidson released their brand new touring chassis. This chassis was redesigned from the ground up, similar to what Harley-Davidson did to the Softails in the 2018 model year. With this new frame, the baggers and all the touring bikes just handled a lot better. Ride quality was improved, handling at high speeds were improved, less flex in the frame. So that was a big deal. Then in 2010, they basically took all the stylistic points that I mentioned before: low profile seat, shocks, bigger wheel in the front, chopped windshield, smoked, all those things they applied to the Road Glide as well. So basically you took everything that was cool and unique about the Streetglide and you applied that to the Road Glide as well. So Harley-Davidson went all in on the Road Glide in this type of custom factory bagger as well. So for those of you who are Road Glide lovers and Streetglide haters, the way the Road Glide looks today is because of the Streetglide, and that happened in 2010 2010. The Road Glide in 2009 went from being the FLTR to in 2010 being called the FLTRX, and then it was called the Road Glide Custom, and that's when it, like I said, it adopted a lot of the changes in the style points that the Streetglide had. So around this time, some of Harley-Davidson's main competitors were seriously taking note of the inroads that Harley-Davidson had made into this untapped market of the Streetglide and this custom bagger world. So around 2008, Victory, who was one of Harley-Davidson's most direct competitors, came out with the Victory Vision. Now, Victory had been around for several years prior to this, but the Victory Vision was the first fairinged motorcycle that they came out with. I gotta say, this is probably the most hideous motorcycle I've ever seen in my life, but they came out with the Victory Vision, and then in 2009 they came out with the Victory Vision Street. That's coincidental. And then they came out with other bikes down the road, like the Magnum and some of the bikes that you see here that are, pretty much direct copies of the Streetglide to tap into this market. And Victory wasn't the only one. In 2011, Polaris acquired Indian Motorcycle as well. They've now dumped the Victory line completely, and now just all their cruiser class motorcycles they build with the Indian name badge on it. Now here's a Chieftain, for example, that is a Streetglide copy with the Batwing fairing on it. So, everything is now being styled after the Streetglide and after the Streetglide's success. And so this right here is, I guess, one of the biggest examples of how Harley-Davidson's Streetglide really did influence the rest of the industry, and a lot of the other manufacturers' bikes that they were building were all influenced by the Harley-Davidson Streetglide. So I'll give you a couple other examples of other manufacturers trying to jump in and try to glean off of some of Harley-Davidson's Streetglide sales. So here you got Moto Guzzi. I believe they call this bike the Flying Fortress. I've never ridden one of these, but it seems like a really cool bike actually. But same thing, you got the knockoff of the Batwing fairing. You've got 2 saddlebags, no tour pack. I mean, you even got advertisements in front of Mount Rushmore. So they're definitely trying to appeal to the Harley-Davidson crowd. You got some of the Harley-Davidson type looking biker guys in the background on some of these shots as well. So definitely trying to compete for Harley-Davidson customers. You've got, I believe this is like Sturgis where they're shooting this. So definitely trying to go after that Streetglide rider. And Honda isn't too proud to try to jump in and make their wannabe Streetglide as well. So they basically took their Honda Goldwing, took the tour pack off, and really try to style it and posture it in their advertising as this real sleek midnight type of cruiser that's got like a sporty feel to it. And so Honda, I don't know exactly how many years they've been doing this now, but it was definitely years after the Streetglide came out. And so again, they're trying to tap into this sportier, less is more styling without the tour pack in the rear. Honda Goldwings have always had a tour pack in the rear. Now all of a sudden it's gone. Now they're trying to tap into this the market of the Streetglide. So you've got, here's a Yamaha, another example. Another thing that some of these manufacturers are trying to do as well, like Yamaha, and I know Victory hired like Arlen S. Arlen S is a huge, big time custom cruiser builder. He's made parts and everything for Harley-Davidsons for years. So if you can't get the cool crowd and the Harley-Davidson crowd organically, then you try to buy it, right? So they've hired Arlen S to try to stylize some of their bikes, just like Victory tried to hire Arlen S to stylize some of their bikes as well, and really try to give it that custom cruiser vibe that is indicative of like a Harley-Davidson. So just to recap and to kind of circle back to my original statement, guys, and how Harley-Davidson single-handedly changed the playing field in the heavy cruiser market. These two things, the Streetglide by the foresight of Harley-Davidson and Willie G to come out with a bike like this, a touring bike that is kind of a custom bagger, that's minimalist, chopped windshield, low-profile shocks and seats, a big wheel in the front type of style. By adopting this style and really finding this niche and this customer preference early, they've been the pioneer, much like in the past, in the cruiser market and the trendsetter in the heavy cruiser arena as well. And this has really influenced a lot of the products and motorcycles they offer today, like your Streetglide. Now they have two different versions of the Streetglide and the Streetglide Special. You've now got the Road Glide that's adopted the same type of minimalist styling. And you've also got the Road Glide Special as well. So that's 4 bikes right there that have really been influenced by the original Streetglide in 2006. And now you've got all these other manufacturers that are also trying to get a piece of this pie as well. And a lot of this is coming on the heels of Harley-Davidson and their success and really tapping into this market and this customer preference. So my next question would be, is Harley-Davidson going to continue to maintain being a trendsetter in the heavy cruiser market? Are they going to be able to identify customer trends and what's going on right now and where customers' preferences are? And are they going to be able to identify how people are customizing their motorcycles and how they're going to be able to hit the next big niche in consumer preferences? You know, I have my speculation right now. I did a video recently on the club style cruiser, or what a lot of people refer to as purpose built cruiser or club style cruiser. I really think that's a huge trend that right now has been going for a while, but I think we still have a huge product life cycle in front of us of that bike. And I really think right now that these baggers, they're going to be leaning more towards a performance bagger. So, you know, I really think that Harley-Davidson needs to step it up with their suspension offerings. I think they're definitely going in the right direction with their performance kits. It would be nicer to have some of this performance stuff right from the factory. That's not to say that the 114 is a slow engine. The 114 is a very good engine, but you know, definitely the suspension and like a T-bar setup on baggers as well. I think that's where the trends are going right now. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to see, you know, with Harley-Davidson also getting into other markets like the Street Fighter and the Pan America, the custom cruiser that's coming out. It'll be interesting to see kind of what Harley-Davidson does next. Let me know what your thoughts are, guys, in the comments below. Did you also witness what I saw happen in the last over a decade with the Streetglide? Do you disagree with me? Do you agree with me? Do you like this type of video? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Take care.